Thank you for attending Energy Careers 2020 and today's Veterans Career and Energy session. My name is Matt Kellum. I'm a Marine Corps veteran and I work for Dominion Energy in Virginia. I will be your host and moderator for today's program. Before we begin, I want to offer a few housekeeping logistics, as the world of virtual meetings is still new to most of us. Our panelists and I have pre-recorded our remarks, but we are here live with you today as well. We will be responding to your questions and comments in the chat feature, so please feel free to ping us with anything you'd like to know more about. We're eager to answer your questions and help you understand more about careers in energy. I would now like to briefly introduce our panelists. You may find more information about this accomplished group of presenters in the Speaker Bio tab on the right of the screen. First, we have Brandon Hyatt, Operations Vice President with Pike Electric and an Army veteran. Next, we have Victoria Olo, Plant Operator with Southern Company and an Army veteran. And finally, Stella Carroll, Director of Project Management, Renewable Energy with Consumers Energy and an Army veteran. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure how this enlisted Marine ended up in this group of Army commissioned officers, but here we are. So in today's session, we'll hear from our panelists about their experiences and how they came to the energy industry. We'll hear about and learn about the values veterans bring to our industry and tips and other perspectives that our panelists may be able to share with our attendees. But first, I believe it's always important to highlight the values that veterans possess and how their veterans align with those of the energy industry. Obviously, our number one core value in the energy industry, as I believe it is in all branches of this, is safety. Second, and these are in no particular order at this point, but character and excellence are certainly values that our veterans bring to our industry. Our veterans are also great at teamwork. That's something that we've learned from day one. And of course, all of our transitioning service members coming into the industry and veterans are very service-oriented, mission-focused, and have a loyalty to their communities. And finally, our veterans are very resilient, and they're always going to work hard following these core values to achieve the business goals that they have set in front of them. So I look forward to this discussion. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit further here, and then I'll turn it to our panelists for them to introduce themselves a little bit more. Again, my name is Matt Kellum, and my role with Dominion Energy is I am our company's military and recruitment program coordinator. Now, in the military, I was in the Marine Reserves from 1994 to 2000, and I did amphibious assault. So those two things don't necessarily align, but I certainly rely on the core values that I just mentioned. And I am in an HR talent acquisition function. I will turn it next to Brandon. If you don't mind, share your name, branch of service and occupation, and a little bit about what you do for Pike Electric.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Great introduction. Thanks for the opening remarks. Yes, I'm Brandon Hyatt. I am a former field artillery officer with active duty service from 1998 to 2005, to include various duty locations such as Fort Lewis, Washington, in and out Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and of course a tour in Iraq and Germany. Currently, I'm working as a operations vice president for Pike Electric, mainly focused on transmission and substation construction along the East Coast, covering from basically Maryland to Georgia. Handling about $125 million budget and about 50 crews of about 5 people each. So thanks, Matt.
So yeah, thank you. You got your hands full. Victoria, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Victoria Olo. I just recently transitioned from the United States Army in January of 2020. I served for 5 years. I was a military intelligence officer. I spent most of my time at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, as well as Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Currently, I am with Southern Nuclear, a subsidiary of Southern Company, working as a plant operator or a non-licensed operator at Plant Vogtle 1 and 2 in Augusta, Georgia. Basically, right now, I'm still in training, but our main roles, we kind of work out in the field at our plants, at our units there, monitoring plant equipment and plant conditions, and keeping the plant running as smoothly and safely as possible while conducting various tasks that the control room requires.
Great, thank you, and welcome to the industry. I know you're still fairly new, but and we look
Yes,
forward to
thank
learning
you.
more about that. Yeah, thank you. Stella, certainly last but not least.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. My name is Stella Carroll, and I was an engineer officer in the Army. I retired after 32 years of service. Currently, I work for Consumers Energy, and I am the Director of Project Management in Renewable Energy, responsible for the execution of our solar wind farms, solar, and also our battery assets to ensure we have a safe, reliable system for our customers.
Great. Yeah, well, first of all, congratulations on your retirement. And also really cool to hear about the side of the industry that you're on. And we'll hear more about that here in just a moment. So before we get into some of the questions for our panelists, I just want to share a little bit about how I came to know about the energy industry, and my story is a little bit unique. So I'm actually the fourth generation of my family to work for Dominion Energy. And actually, the three of the four of us are veterans. My dad, the only one who did not serve in the military, he actually started with the company 2 weeks out of high school. So 45 years later, he retired. And throughout my entire family, to include my brother, who does also work for the company, we have over 120 years with Dominion Energy. And the reason I like to share that is I think that speaks to a few things. One, I think it speaks to the stability of our industry. I think it also speaks to the fact that we have always been military and veteran friendly, going back into even the early 1900s, and I'm sure before that. So that is just a little bit about me. I also, just as a bit of a side note, and to speak to some of the folks in the audience who might be in this same position, I was also a student veteran. Kind of trying to feel my way around a college campus and figure out what I wanted to do. And in hindsight, I wish I'd become a little bit more aware of some of these industry discussions, and also in that case, maybe student veteran organizations that might have helped me get on track sooner than later in my career. So that is a little bit about me. Brandon, let me ask you first. You're a vice president at Pike. Can you tell us about your journey and tell us what you look for in a veteran when they're applying for your jobs, and what jobs can they expect to find in the industry, whether it's entry level or other, but also what are those growth opportunities?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, the industry as a whole, there's so many different options. Obviously, I mean, everything from what Stella referred to with renewables and solar and wind, all the way to your standard line crews that are out there day in, day out in the rain and the storms and the sun and the heat, turning on lights every day. So my journey started when I first got out. I went and did general contracting for a family company for about 7 years. The housing bubble burst, kind of referring to your stability of the industry, I had an opportunity to join on at Pike. Started out as a project manager, kind of field engineer, helping plan projects, working with equipment, materials. We built about 550 miles of transmission in South Carolina, helping kind of tying in some of Victoria's stuff there in Vogel and working with those organizations. After that project wrapped up, I was a director, did a lot of work out in Texas, so managing multiple project managers, multiple customers over the whole footprint of basically Texas and Oklahoma. Tying back into the military roots that pretty much everybody probably on this panel and audience has been. I went on deployment again, even in a civilian sector. I went to Puerto Rico for 5 months for storm restoration. So we had 450 personnel down there, 270 pieces of equipment for 5 months straight, helping to help get the island back on its feet after Hurricane Maria. And then came back, and now, Vice President of Operations, doing kind of what I do now. To your point, the opportunities are unlimited. You can do everything from substations to renewables. We're getting into the telecom space now too. We all know that. I know this is an energy kind of electrical, but also telecom, 5G. We've kind of branched into that. We even have a gas branch that does, gas piping. So there's just a lot of different opportunities. I think, one thing you referred to, Matt, is, what opportunities, how can people get in the industry? It does take some time. It's a lot. I think when you get in first, it's a lot like being, the new private or the new lieutenant when you show up at a unit. You got to spend your time on the ground. You got to spend, doing a lot of things maybe you don't really love to do, or maybe you don't have the real background to do, but it builds you up. It builds that base foundation that allows you to grow from there. And once kind of people get past that initial orientation, you can do pretty much anything from, lead crews, again, the leadership piece, the teamwork piece, that's there every single day with those crews that go out and the men and women that make it happen. But also when you go into the leadership, it's the same thing. You don't want your higher officers not having any clue about, what the crews do, or the enlisted, guys and gals do too. It's all one big team. And I think it just transitions very well to what, this panel's discussing, to, what we do day in and day out.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all that. I was trying to keep eye contact with you and make some notes, knowing that we're all on video here. But there's a couple of things that stand out, and I think actually might help us transition to a question I'll have for Victoria. So one of the things that I heard you say, and I say it to folks who are transitioning and other veterans, is as you're planning your transition, let's just assume it's a service member transitioning out, it's okay to have another job before you find your dream job, as long as it's maybe part of your plan. So I want to make sure that folks know that that's okay. It's okay to get some experience elsewhere and then go to a Pike Electric or elsewhere. The other thing is, I really appreciate you sharing your experience, but the growth opportunity. I think that is one of the things, as we mentioned, we really want to highlight in this discussion is the energy industry offers great growth potential. And then the other thing is, whether you have one or two stops before you find your dream job with Pike Electric, Southern, or consumers, no matter where you go, you have to be prepared to orient yourself in some way. So I think those are some really good tips, because the folks attending and listening, hopefully they're making some note and just really kind of taking away some things that they can do to prepare for what's to come after this discussion. Victoria, let me turn to you, because you're in your transition, you're orienting right now, and I believe you came through the Department of Defense Skill Bridge program to Southern Nuclear. Can you tell us about that experience, and I guess more importantly, maybe a step further back, how did you find out about the energy industry and that particular Skill Bridge opportunity?
Yes, absolutely. So the DoD Skills Bridge program played an enormous role in getting me to where I am today. But to kind of skip back to the beginning of it, I first found out about the energy industry kind of through my studies at school. I didn't go into school actually planning on pursuing an engineering degree, but I went to the United States Military Academy, and that kind of has a root. They still place a big emphasis in the maths and sciences and engineering. So I found out about nuclear engineering there. I didn't know a whole lot about it, but I thought it sounded very interesting. So I just kind of dove in head first, and I found a really big passion for nuclear engineering through those academic studies. And now, that being said, upon graduation, of course, you commission and have to serve at least 5 years in the U.S. Army, and there aren't really many opportunities to utilize a degree in nuclear engineering in the Army, say, as opposed to the Navy. But that's how I kind of got my foot in the door, I guess, early on with an interest in the energy industry, and kind of how I set my sights on trying to get there post-service. But going back to the Skills Bridge program, I had heard about it, but I hadn't really known anyone that had taken part in it. So early on, about a year out, I think, from when I knew that I was going to be planning on transitioning, I started doing some research, going to my base's transitions office and working with some of the program coordinators there to set up a plan. And for anyone that's kind of unfamiliar, the Skills Bridge program allows transitioning military members to use their last about 180 days or so of your active duty time to transition into a civilian career. So again, it's pretty flexible as long as you have a plan and you work with your chain of command and get the go ahead from them to take advantage of it. You can really put together any kind of program that you want. So I of course knew that it was a program that I wanted to take advantage of. So I started early on, and I think that that's one of the most important things for making that a successful part of your transition. So it was probably about 7 months out. I was actually doing some research, and I found troopstoenergyjobs.com, which again, I didn't know much about, but I did a little bit of exploring on there, and I found a lot of information and resources. But one of the biggest things was actually a list of various points of contacts for individuals or for different companies throughout the energy industry. And I think for the most part, they were pretty much all military focused recruiters for each of these companies. So I reached out to a couple, gave a bit of context of my background, that I was currently serving in the military, but I was planning on getting out, that I had an academic background in nuclear engineering, and that was a career field that I really was interested in pursuing. I sent them my resume. And let them know that I was actually interested in utilizing a skills bridge type program to move into this new career. And actually it was Jeremy Foshi from Southern Company reached out to me actually almost right away. Seemed very excited that I had reached out to them. Seemed interested in trying to get me on board and really actually utilizing this program. Of course, Southern Company hadn't had any background or experience in, having anyone come through on that program either. So it was definitely a learning experience for both of us, for all of us. But again, I can't stress the importance enough of why starting early in that case made it so important. Because there's just a lot of logistics to work out, timelines, how I was actually considered a contractor or a non-employee while I was actually there, because I was still in the Army. So logistics wise, it's pretty interesting, but if you take the time to get it sorted out, it was a very extremely useful program. I think it was in June that I actually finished up my time on the Skills Bridge program. And, I didn't do anything different. Just one day I showed up and I was now just considered an employee, but I was still doing the same kind of job that I had been for the past 6 months.
Yeah, and I was just going to reiterate, I'm just glad that you're on with us to share your specific experiences with the Skill Bridge program. Dominion Energy has also, I have to say, still technically in a pilot phase. We started at Q4 of 2019, and then unfortunately COVID put a little bit of a halt on any progress. But I think that the folks that we brought on would say a lot of the same things you did. And some things that I want to call out to folks that are listening and watching is in no particular order, but you've again reiterated it's important to start early with your planning and preparation as you're transitioning. And the same is the case if you're already out of the military or in the Guard and Reserve like I was. Begin planning and networking. Those are really important, and do some research. To reiterate, troopstoenergyjobs.com. That program is one that is really good for that type of education and networking. And I also I don't want to get too far away from the fact that never mind what school one goes to, but the military in general is really high on and teaches a lot of the STEM skills that our industry looks for. Of course, we have folks that will transition really well into supply chain, IT cybersecurity, all the threat intelligence, all these other places, line operations. But STEM is really rooted in much of what the military does, and in your case, in your education as well. So I just wanted to call those few things out. So if I may, Stella, I'm going to turn to you now. Obviously, you're currently a director at Consumers Energy. What was your first position out of the military? And if I'm not mistaken, I think you spent some time on the Guard and Reserve. So maybe what was your first position out of the military, and describing maybe a little bit about the civilian world plus Guard and Reserve time simultaneously, and then just share with us any more about your growth and observations.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, for that great question. So, I started as a reservist first before I joined Consumers Energy. So it's kind of like I transitioned into Consumers Energy versus the other way around. And I had a great opportunity going to college where I entered, into as an NCO, entered into the officer ranks as a cadet, and was a drilling reservist for a couple years at college. So as you could imagine, as a cadet, I was really into physical fitness, did a lot of running, and really did enjoy that part of the training. So one day I happened to attend one of the aerobic classes that was sponsored at the school. So I said, yeah, I'd go. I went with a friend, and lo and behold, I go there, and just happened to be standing, had a encounter with one of the Consumers Energy human resource coordinator that was there. She was doing a hiring fair, and we started talking a little bit, and I was able to disclose that, yes, I was an Army reservist. I was studying electrical engineering. And by the way, I was a cadet for a unit in Hurley, Wisconsin, electric power line unit, which at that time they only had 2 of them as a reserve in the United States. So anyway, with that short discussion, I was able to get an interview with her later in that day. I absolutely had no idea what Consumers Energy even was, because where I lived was not in Consumers territory, and then up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan was in Consumers territory. So, as preparing for that interview, I was able to go online and actually, learn a little bit about the utility company. So, based on my military experience, working with the power line unit, my training that I had, because, I was an NCO for a couple years, and so had a lot of good background. I was successfully able to land a job at Consumers Energy as a supervisor in the electric lines department. I was the first female hired into that supervisor position, leading our operating employees. And the history of the company is typically you work as a journeyman, a line worker, you get promoted to be a supervisor. And so they typically did not hire anybody external from the company, especially a woman, into that position. But it has been great. It was really eye-opening. I had no idea the complexity of the energy industry and their type of business model. So, I quickly, I was aware of, how operations work, storm response, the amount of construction that happens, whether it's residential or commercial within the company, the fleet, and as I can go on, you can see a lot of similarities between, the military and how they operate in terms of structure, and then how the utility operates. So, during the years, I was able to have a lot of different opportunities in leadership positions, both in operations and in engineering, project management, so on and so forth, to be able to experience, the different logistical and operation supports that is behind running a utility company. So it has been, very rewarding, and the skills that you learn in the military are definitely transferable to the energy industry, with a lot of different opportunities, as Brandon talked about, whether it's electric, gas, renewable, a lot of different things, whether you want to, work in the field or, on project sites, plants, the opportunities are really endless, to either start at an entry level and or, move up in the organization, depending on your skilling and training and so on and so forth. The other opportunity that it also provided me is to work and volunteer as the co-chair for the Veterans Advisory Panel Employee Resource Group, which has been also an excellent experience. And I can expand upon that a little bit if we've got more time here in our agenda.
Yeah, please. I'm glad, and I actually intended to include that in my long question when I asked you to share with us. But yeah, please talk a little bit more about your Veterans Affinity Group. I know at Dominion Energy, we refer to it as a Veterans Resource Group. What would you say have been your experiences, but what's also the broader value that, that an affinity group might offer to a veteran community within the company?
Yeah, so the Veterans Advisory Panel of Consumers is a couple years old, and it's really bringing to light some of those issues that veterans has as they transition from the military to the corporate world. I mean, there's a lot of differences that you can imagine in policies and procedures, hiring practices. When a new person comes in the utility business, their skills maybe are foreign. It's the resumes are a little bit different, but you really are looking for, the leadership capabilities that they have, the type of work, the technical experiences. And so what the ERG helps to do is really bridge that gap for those individuals that transition. Also, we have several Guard and reservists that at one time are deployed or redeploying. And so we're really working with those families. We have a family support group that really helps, communicate and provide some additional military benefits that we have for those individuals that are deployed. So we're really here to, identify any pay issues, any benefit issues, and really, have a diversity of candidates there in terms of hiring and recruiting. So we get involved with those as well to really promote veteran hiring within the company.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I know some of our listeners could very well be other companies, some of our peers. So that's really good for not only the veterans and service members and maybe even spouses attending and listening, but the other companies. Brandon, let me turn over to you real quick. Does Pike Electric have a resource group of sorts or something similar, or can you at least describe maybe a little bit about what you all do for your veteran employees and related?
Sure. Yeah, Matt. We definitely have some veteran support organizations. We have a number of groups that kind of communicate through our own. We call it Pike to Go. It's basically our internal Facebook type situation. There's a separate veterans page that there's communication shared between the group. It sounds like from what Stella talked about, there's obviously some opportunities for growth. I love that she brings out the support of the families as National Guard and active. Well, not as many active, but obviously reservists get deployed. We have plenty of those folks in our organization that does that. So we probably need to circle back around and see how we can better support them and their families. But we do identify that and try to keep the communication open. One thing too, Matt, if I want to kind of go back to the opportunity thing,
Yes.
And I failed to mention this earlier. I had a lunch the other day with a retired executive from a very large utility, and all the utilities are struggling with the baby boomers leaving the workforce. We've talked about it for years. We've all mentioned it, but now it's coming to fruition. And there's a lot of concern from most of these large organizations on how they're going to refill the ranks. And so it's a prime opportunity as our folks leave the military to step right into this organizations and this environment and this industry for a long-term growth and opportunity. So I failed to mention that earlier, and I wanted to get that out there, please. So thank you.
I appreciate. No, thank you for sharing that, and that's really important. I mean, that's something I know. Just to tie it back to the Center for Energy Workforce Development, I know from my 10 plus years of experience with CEWD, that's been a large part of our efforts. Is we know that the workforce is going to turn over and evolve and change, and so where do these talent pipelines come from? And again, very happy to be in this discussion talking about veterans being a part of that solution. Victoria, let me, if I may, ask you, and as a newer employee to the industry, what has been some of your experience within Southern Company? And I know they have great practices as well. Have you been invited to, or have you seen some activities with their resource groups or other support functions that you've seen or experienced?
With that, Personally, not a ton, but I think a lot of that can be also contributed to the pandemic situation right now. Of course, we were actually working kind of off-site a little bit, and we kind of just recently transitioned back on-site. So I know that they're definitely out there. I just haven't, gotten the chance to kind of jump right in yet. But Southern Company has been absolutely, welcoming all of us veterans with open arms. I can't, say enough about how much they helped me. I mean, I know my experience, but a lot of my current classmates in my training program, there's 15 of us, and I think about half of us are veterans. Of course, as I previously mentioned, mostly from the Navy side, it being nuclear, but yeah, they've made it extremely easy, and I can't say enough about how appreciative I am for making my transition as smooth as it was, really.
Sure. Yeah. And that's a good point. I know you mentioned, obviously we're talking now during, still basically the midst of COVID, which is unfortunate, but I think you make a good point. One, all of our companies are taking the right protocols to continue to execute our critical business. But it may not afford as many opportunities to do some of the Veterans Resource Group related activities. Now, to Stella's point, I know that that many of our groups or many of our veteran employees and other leaders are still also doing some of what Brandon mentioned. That we're still checking on and inquiring about our employees and making sure that they're doing well and ultimately staying safe. And so one thing I want to reiterate, and then I want to get real quick tips so that we can keep an eye on our time. One thing that a lot of our companies offer, as well as many others in the energy industry, is tuition reimbursement. So I would also say that if there are some service members or veterans that are, and spouses for that matter, that are transitioning into our industry, that many of us have great tuition reimbursement programs where if you want to continue your education and to continue to develop yourself professionally so that you can take advantage of our industry's growth opportunities, that is certainly something that that you'll want to keep in mind and will certainly be a part of your professional development. So real quick, I'm going to start with Brandon, then Victoria, and then wrap with Stella before we close out. But Brandon, if you could give one tip or one recommendation, and it might have been something that we've already covered, what would that tip be to the service members, veterans, and spouses that are listening?
Yeah, Matt, I'm going to have to probably steal Victoria's thunder. There's a lot of resources out there. Reach out to these companies. If there's a certain area of the country you want to live in, or there's a certain, position that you're really looking for, more than likely it's going to be there. You just need to reach out. I'll say that, from a contractual standpoint, we haven't probably been as proactive as maybe some of the utilities, and we're working on that very diligently. But, if you want to live in Arizona and work in the power industry, there's a job for you. If you want to work in upstate New York doing in the power industry, there's a job for you. So I think if you can kind of do that and really pinpoint on really where you want to live and the opportunities are there. Sorry, Victoria.
Yeah, that's all right. We're going to make it challenging for Victoria. So Victoria, what are one or two tips you might suggest? And you can't use Brandon's who used yours.
No, that's okay. I was going to go a different route for this one anyway. I'd say the biggest piece of advice that I would have, I guess, personally for me, I thought that it would be a little bit challenging. I had the academic background and I had the passion. I knew that the nuclear industry was the way that I wanted to go, but I was a little afraid at first that, because I had spent 5 years in the Army in military intelligence doing, nothing nuclear engineering or nuclear energy related, that I would kind of be at a disadvantage. But I found that actually kind of having a little bit more of that diverse background coming from the Army, where I was a junior officer and had management and resourcing skills, kind of set me apart from others in the hiring pool. So I think that it's important to reiterate that, even though I wasn't doing nuclear engineering, nuclear energy related tasks in the military, to not be afraid to make a big career change, if that's really what you want to do.
Yeah, and I would chime in saying I totally agree. And one tip that I tell a lot of service members and veterans that I'm speaking with is, as you're researching our energy industry, and this could be the case with any other industry too, we're as guilty, I think, as the military of giving things really kind of strange job title names. So as you see postings on whatever job board or a career page, open the posting up and actually read through it. And I think what most folks will find is one of a few things. One, they may actually have more skills that align with that particular position than they think. Or it might give a little insight into what that company is seeking. So that might actually help with some of your preparation and other networking and things like that. And then just basically networking to learn about and talk to some of us via LinkedIn or learn about, what does all this mean, or what are the opportunities in the industry across the country. And so anyway, I think a lot of what you're sharing is really good, because it's never going to be a perfect match. I mean, I would have never thought that as an amphibious assault crew chief in the Marine Corps that I would end up in HR and talent acquisition. And that just happened to fall into it and could leverage my education similar to yours. Stella, what's a tip or a recommendation that you might share with the folks listening and watching?
Yeah, what my big tip would be that, the world needs energy. That pandemic has really shown that we are an essential industry. There's a lot of different opportunities, both traditional and non-traditional roles. And the opportunities are really there, transferable skills that you can work, anywhere. So you're really going from, serving your country to serving customers. And energy is needed to enhance the quality of life. The energy industry just provides all different kind of sorts of positions, from accounting to engineering to construction to logistics support. I mean, you name it. So there's a lot of parallelisms between the military in general and what the utility does when you kind of look at, their storm response or emergency response and the structure of how they respond to different emergencies and provide, service to their customers. So I think there's a lot of parallelisms there and opportunities and skills that we need the leadership. And the military veterans have that, and so the energy field is perfect for them.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we actually have a little bit more time. Let me do one more round robin, and I'm going to mix up the order a little bit here. Victoria, is there anything that we haven't already talked about, or that you haven't had the chance to share that you might like to leave folks with?
No, again, I think just the most important thing is just if there's something that you want to do, and even if you haven't been doing it before, to not be afraid to really make that leap. I mean, the military gives you so many, and I guess this is kind of tying back into what I was saying before, but the Army or the military really does give you so many transferable skills that no matter what you want to do, you're going to be able to transfer those skills, not only just confidence, leadership, teamwork, being able to, admit to mistakes and make yourself a better person overall. I just think that it all really ties into, building yourself up as a person and, giving you the confidence to do whatever it is that you want to do. So,
yeah. Agreed. Brandon, any last words or anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah, Matt, again, I think we hit on a lot of great points. I think a lot of information's here. I think Stella hit on another, not to keep stealing everybody's thunder, but being an essential service is really critical going forward for all aspects. You know, like you said, you served your country, and now you can serve your community too by being in the power industry. And I think that's something that probably means a lot to all of us. Most people don't just arbitrarily decide to join the military just because they want to do something bigger than themselves and provide it and do for others. And so that transitions really well into our industry going forward. You're always trying to do whatever it can to get the lights on for people in storms. You're doing whatever you can to try to get cheaper, more affordable, more clean energy to the market. So there's those types of things that transition very well for our future people coming out of the military. So I think that's really good for them. So.
Yeah, and you what you shared was really nice because, Stella, your remarks, and Victoria and Brandon, which how you all wrapped up, really I think kind of ties back to our earlier mention of our industry's core values and how they almost identically, we use different words, but almost identically align with that of each of the branches of service. And the other thing I want to just make sure that folks realize is networking is so important. And obviously you're here participating in the Energy Careers 2020 event. Hopefully you're one of the attendees listening to this breakout session, but networking is so important. And I think we probably all have experienced very positive results from any of our networking prior to coming into the industry. Stella gave a really great example of that. But even while we're in the industry and as we're looking for more of you all to join our industry, so I can't stress enough, networking and LinkedIn is a great tool for that. Troops to Energy Jobs has a lot of other good tips and resources along those lines. And then even to Victoria's point, she found points of contact through the Troops to Energy Jobs site. So I just want to reiterate networking, and plan. And it is never too late to start a plan and or revise a plan. So I just want to reiterate those things. I hope you all have enjoyed the discussion. Thank you so much to our panelists. Again, Brandon Hyatt with Pike, Victoria Olo with Southern Nuclear, Southern Company, and Stella Carroll with Consumers Energy. I really appreciate your time and for sharing your experiences and some tips and perspective. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close out this particular session. On behalf of the Center for Energy Workforce Development, I would like to encourage all of our attendees, again, to go to www.troops2energyjobs.com to find out more about the industry, and that there is a virtual coach available there on the Troops to Energy Jobs website to help you out through the process, to answer any questions you may have, and to help you with that networking and navigating. Thank you again to our panelists and to you who have joined us for today's session. It's been our pleasure to share our pride and passion for what we do. And while this session is over, the information and opportunities here at Energy Careers 2020 do continue. I hope you'll take a moment to check out the exhibit hall, talk with the companies, and learn about the industry-related job and internship opportunities that are out there. And you can also visit our chat rooms to connect with other industry ambassadors who will gladly answer any of your questions that you may have. Enjoy the rest of your time at Energy Careers 2020.